This is like the second
Yeah.
stage, I think.
Yeah, we're officially in the second wave, and because it's getting cold now, it's really important, you guys, to stay away from people. I know that you're young and you want to hang out with your friends, but we don't want this to get worse. So it's important to be a little lonely, just that's what we got to do to be a little lonely. But that's my state on that. You have plenty of work to do, so let's do this work and get this English credit, because everybody's written a first draft now of your essay, of your personal narrative, and I've given most of you revision notes, but now I'm gonna really teach you how to take a look at that. So we're gonna start with this fun little activity. This is from my Facebook page last weekend. I had a lot of fun. 74 people engaged with me and played this game with me on Facebook. And I won against a former student. So it was kind of fun. Most of my Facebook friends are, in fact, former students or current students. If you want to befriend me on Facebook, go ahead, Sydney Holland King. So here's the problem, right? If you understand this, you're a critical thinker. I'm going to give you a chance to actually answer it in a second, so don't answer out loud. There are 34 people. I walk into the garden. You kill 30. How many people are in the garden? Let's see what you answer. How many people are in the garden? There are 34 people. I walk into the garden. You kill 30. How many people are in the garden? Give me your answer. All right, Brandon, if you're not in the near pod, let's get you in. And by the way, both my Brandons need to use last names because you're both here, and one of you is Brandon Z and the other one is Brandon D. You can just do that as an initial. Even if just whoever's coming in now, I think I've got Brandon Diaz in here, or do I have Brandon Zaniga in here? I don't know. Just let me know. You can type it in the chat. All right. Do we think we know the answer? Do we think we know? All right. The first and third sentence are in fact a logical fallacy. All right. They're called a red herring fallacy. They're designed to give you irrelevant information that confuses you. So if you look at that carefully, there are 34 people. You kill 30. They don't mention the garden in those two sentences. They only mention the garden in the I walk into the garden, right? So how many people are in the garden? Only one, only one. And so these sentences aren't very good, actually. It's not a logical passage. They didn't have any transition language. And so they needed to be revised, right? So that the whole problem was to just fake you out. And it was amazing how many people got that wrong on Facebook. I instantly got it right because I'm a reader.
Dang,
And
they really tricked us though. Like, I
yeah,
got
but
it
they
wrong.
did it. Yeah, most people got it wrong. I mean, my pastor
Yeah,
got it wrong. I was like, whoa, you're a smart
that's
man. How'd you get this
crazy.
wrong? But if you see, right, they got it wrong because if you're looking at the problem, it makes you think it's a math problem, right? There are 34 people, you kill 30, you start doing math. There's no math in this. It's just reading.
Yeah,
It's just reading, and it's just a failure of this writer to put together language. It was done intentionally. They did it to confuse you. Now, good writers can put their words together in ways that don't confuse you. So I took those same sentences and I combined them to make two new sentences that were more interesting and said more, right? So the first one, there are 34 people in a garden. I walked in and watched as you killed 30. I was lucky that I wasn't one of them, right? I'm using the same three basic sentences, but I mixed them up and I added some transition to change them around. And now I'm doing the same thing in this one. There were 34 people in a classroom. Since it was the time of COVID, I walked into the garden. You killed 30 of those that remained, you cruel virus. Right? Now I added even more context, gave another detail and put it somewhere else and told a whole different story. Same words. So this is what revision is, right? Revision is taking words that were confusing, whether they were intentionally confusing or accidentally confusing, and making them less confusing, right? So if you've ever read a book or an article or anything that actually impressed you, that you thought, wow, this guy has really great words, even a song, lyrics, but the chances are it went through a really extensive revision process before it got published. Like, we think that authors are amazing, but no, they're just humans and they just write. So um, if you're writing, you got to have somebody reading it in order for you to actually know that what you're trying to say is getting through. So revising is that process where you get feedback and you figure out how to change your words. All right. So think about this. Have you ever had a time when a teacher asked you to go back and check your work on paper? Did you ever have a time where you had to revise, right? What specific areas of your writing did your teacher note that needed to be revised? And were there parts of the revision process that were more challenging than others? Most of you, I gave some revision notes to already. Have you read them? Have you done anything with them? If you prefer to speak your answer, notice that you can just press this button down here, just mute your Zoom call and press this button and record into your device right now. Or you can type. I'll give you a minute. All right, we're gonna keep going. Next activity, I want you to fill in the blanks. I want to see if you remember what the steps of the writing process are. We've gone over this, we had a lesson on it. So you just move up these steps of the writing process into the blanks where they fit. The first step of the writing process is blank. You can do that in a variety of ways, from free writing to outlining. After you have some ideas, you can move into blank your writing piece. After you have something that feels finished, or at least as finished as you can make it on your own, get some feedback and you can complete the blank phase of writing. This is the most important phase and may take a while to complete. When you have said all you want to say in the way you want to say it, you still need the last step, blank. This step will help you polish your writing and make sure people read it the way you want it to be read. So, where should I put these? Anyone want to help me? I'm going to do it at random unless you tell me to move these around. And click done. And I got none of them right. How did you guys do? All right, keep going. So when you're in the revision stage, you're going to get something that looks like this. Most of you have something that looks like this from me already. In this stage, you fine tune what you've written. And the goal is to make your ideas as clear, focused, and well organized as possible so that you can achieve your purpose, which is to inform or entertain people and meet the needs of your audience, who is me right now. And if you choose to send this in as your college application later on and your school career, that will be the audience. These are the Common App application questions. So we're prepping you so that if you decide to go to college next year, you'll be able to put your application together, no problem. Having already done a first draft of this, you'll just keep revising. So you'll notice that I do give comments on the side, and your job is to use those comments to change your writing, right? So this comment, I said, the sentence is what we call announcing. It's not the most interesting way to start a story, right? See, the person said, in this draft, I'll be talking about. That's not the most interesting way to start. So I'm giving them suggestions. Maybe you could use a quote from one of these songs because you're talking about a musician that you like. Maybe you could use a little story, right? Some kind of more interesting introduction. Now, what I'm expecting to see is for the student that wrote this to use that advice, change this first paragraph, and then click that so that the revision note is gone, right? The revision note is there to support you. Sometimes it'll be an editing note like this, where it says replace one-sided with one-sided with a hyphen in it. Just accept that, okay? I don't expect you guys to have perfect spelling and grammar. I want you to be able to just accept my support on that. And then with these questions and notes that are more like a guidance, use them to change the writing in here. Don't waste time writing comments. This is for the person who's giving you feedback. You're the author, you write in the middle. All right, So one thing you need to look for is paragraph level revisions. I want you to check all your paragraphs to make sure that they contain a main idea that connects to the paragraph's central topic. They should have a topic sentence that contains the main idea. They should have effective sentences with supporting evidence if you need it, or details. You need transition that connects ideas, right? You don't want to be like that first example of a red herring where things are disconnected and confusing. You want it to be cohesive and have a concluding sentence in that paragraph that relates back to the topic sentence and helps us transition. So see if you can, which sentence needs to go. You've got some drawing tools here at the bottom. You can just pick up one of them, like your a marker or a highlighter. You can make your marker thicker, and then you can just go ahead and cross out the sentence you think needs to be crossed out. Chlorophyll is a pigment that impacts the color and growth of leaves. As the primary working force in leaf cells, chlorophyll is what keeps leaves green. Chlorophyll relies on sunlight and warm temperatures. Carotenoids and anthocyanins are two other leaf pigments are less familiar to most people. Found in the leaves of countless plants, chlorophyll absorbs energy from the sun's beaming rays in the form of red and blue light and creates a chemical reaction during photosynthesis. The process of photosynthesis takes place when carbon dioxide and water are converted into oxygen and carbohydrates. And hopefully you've been doing this already, but if you're like me, you see that this sentence here just doesn't really need to be in there. So we can cross it all the way out because it's about something that's not connected, right? The whole thing is about chlorophyll. Then they just sort of mention these two other things. That's not helpful. So we submit and then we keep moving. And if you've got any, draw that on there with me. Go ahead and submit. Nice. Just take out that sentence. And let's keep going. All right. So what? This is one of my favorite notes to write on people's paper, and I don't mean it in a snarky, sarcastic way. I just mean it's a very shorthand way of saying, why did you put this in here, right? I'm not clear. And if I'm not clear, your job is just to make it clear, just to put in the writing what makes it important. So you should do that for yourself about every sentence to ensure that it contributes something important to that paragraph, to that whole narrative. And you take sentences out that don't directly relate or support the main idea of the paragraph. Or, sometimes we just find that we've been repeating ourselves and saying the same thing over and over. Just notice that and delete sentences that don't add anything, any more details or any more information. And then, the last thing is we're looking at grammar and usage, and that's part of the revision process. It's more like editing, right? The correcting of spelling and punctuation and verb tense and grammar. And those things help make sure our writing is clear and understandable. But at this level, I don't expect you to know it all. So we will be supporting you. Just one thing that you might take a look for that I've been seeing is parallel structure. So it gives you clarity in your writing, and it uses word patterns to give two or more ideas equal weight. So the typical way to join words or phrases in a sentence is with conjunctions like and or. So you'll see this is a not parallel. On weekend afternoons, Cristobal enjoys reading comic books, doing crossword puzzles, and television. You might even be able to hear that sounds off. Parallel structure revises the same meaning, but has the words in the same tense, which makes it make more sense. On weekend afternoons, Cristobal enjoys reading comic books, doing crossword puzzles, and watching television. So notice that we just changed and television to and watching television, but because this is an ing word and doing and reading are also ing words, that makes it flow. Again, not parallel would be Georgette and Gina like to dance, swim, and to ride bicycles. Right? Parallel would be Georgette and Gina like to dance, swim, and bike. So let's just notice how the patterns of the words are the same in the sentences that are parallel. And you want to look for that in your writing. Make sure your patterns are similar. So let's do another little activity here. Oh, I didn't make this a draw it, I guess. So let's just talk about which sentence in the passage lacks parallel structure and see if we can find it together. When golfers head out to the green, they rarely wear any form of protective gear to shield their bodies during the game. In fact, golf is rarely described as the sport of golf. Instead, it's referred to as the game of golf. On the other hand, we hear football, soccer, volleyball, and lacrosse referred to as sports, but the competition among teams is referred to as games. Would anyone consider running, dancing, or skateboard as sports? The answer is probably not. Instead, they'd call them activities and have physical benefits, not sports. This information should help people who are speculating about golf to better understand that the competition is what makes the game, not the actual activity itself. All right, I think this one is the same thing, but this one is the draw it, so I can remove the other one. So we take this again, make it bigger, make it any color you want. I never correct anybody in red ink though, because that feels bad. So I use green or blue or something if I'm writing on paper. And does anybody see one? You can work on yours. I noticed this one here actually has the same problem. Would anyone consider running, dancing, or a skateboard? I think should say skateboarding instead. That would make more sense. All right, keep going. So when we're in this revision phase, we're looking really closely, we're getting to the point where we're looking more closely at our words, not just at the big ideas, but at the words and the phrases and clauses rather than complete sentences. And this happens sometimes that you put in incomplete sentences when you're trying to expand an idea, but you haven't quite got there yet. Let's let Akeem in. Welcome, Akeem. We're in the middle of our lesson on revision for our personal narrative, which is the have to do for your portfolio. And we do know, right, we're reviewing that the portfolio is your personal narrative plus either the first marking period project, literary analysis, or the third marking period podcast project, and one essay that's going to argue what your grade should be and why. So it'll be 3 pieces to your portfolio. 1 you haven't done yet, 2 you should have already done that we're just revising. You want these to be the best you can be because that's the proof that you really learned what you needed to learn in this English class. All right, so let's keep going. Sentence combining is the art of combining sentences with phrases and clauses to add variety to your sentences. I did this with our Do Know activity, taking that Facebook challenge and turning it into 2 completely different stories. So let's look at these 3. The game lasted 2 hours. It went into overtime twice. It was exhausting to watch. Those are fine sentences. They're just very simple and kind of boring to have 3 of them stuck together that way. So one thing we can do when we notice we've done that is combine them to make one sentence. Since the game went into overtime twice, the game lasted 2 hours and was exhausting to watch. See, I just added a comma instead of the periods, and all of a sudden, and the and, it's a much better sentence. It's more interesting. All right. 2 kinds, there are phrases and there are dependent clauses. To fix fragments, be sure you add the missing part of the sentence. So, to win the game is a phrase and it's incorrect. We want to win the game is correct because I've added the people that are doing the thing. As the final buzzer sounded, that's a dependent clause that's incorrect. Emma made the 3-pointer as the buzzer sounded. That's correct, right? Because now I've put the person in who's doing it. If you just say as the final buzzer sounded, I'm waiting for the next thing. What else is there? By the way, you guys can in fact pass this class at the buzzer with a 3-pointer by doing this project to extend that metaphor. All right. So we want to make sure we're using our punctuation and punctuating our phrases and clauses correctly. Most of these dependent clauses and phrases at the beginning of a sentence need a comma after them. Most phrases and commas will not need a comma before them, in the middle, or at the end of the sentence. So while waiting for practice to start, Connor did his homework. Connor did his homework while waiting for practice to start. See, if you move the words around, you can take the comma out. During the last quarter of the game, Lucas scored 10 points. If I flip that, Lucas scored 10 points during the last quarter of the game, I no longer need the comma. So there are more than one way to write every sentence is the point there. So let's do some of these together. I want to see what you can do with sentence combining. We'll do this first one together, and then you guys will do another couple to practice. So for each group of phrases and clauses before, combine them correctly to form one sentence. You may not use all words when combining the sentences. All right, So here's our sentence. The girl in the red shoes getting onto the airplane, she is my sister. How do I put those words together to make a sentence that really is strong? The girl in the red shoes getting into the airplane, she is my sister. I might start with that girl. And then I've got a stronger sentence, I think. All right. Let's have you do one yourselves. For the group of phrases and clauses below, combine them correctly to form one sentence. You may not use all the words when combining the sentences. From my Uncle Charlie, I learned how to put up a tent. I learned how to start a campfire during my trip last spring. Right? Nicely put together. All right. So after we revise, we edit. Let's take another look at this one, see if we can find which 4 words in this passage should be capitalized that are not right now. Look for the words that are kind of blue. You can see the blue highlight. Which ones of those, and there's 4 of them, and you can just kick your highlighter, pick any color of highlight you want, and highlight which words you think. So the planning committee was busy organizing a spring dance to reflect the historical time period they were studying in history class. The committee members chose the Roaring '20s as the dance's theme. Choose a date for the event provided to be a more difficult task. The members knew that the dance should be in May, but they couldn't decide on a day of the week. After some heated debate, the members reached a consensus and decided to hold the event on a Friday to avoid conflicts with other weekend plans. Right, 4 words that need to be capitalized. You got it? Do you know what they are? Spring, Roaring '20s, Friday, May. I think that's it. All right. Can you find the word in this one that is misspelled? When the shoppers entered the store, the outrageous deals delighted them. Right away, they spotted some shirts that were extremely affordable. Fortunately, the store had been planned for the extra customers and service representatives were plentiful. One of those words is misspelled. Can you find it and highlight it? Highlighters are right here. You can pick any color you like. It's okay to get it wrong. You learn that way. Just curious to see if you can catch the misspelling. Well done. You are correct if you chose outrageous. All right. We got to also really in the editing phase, which is your last phase. After you've done all your revision, you send it to me and I am happy to do this part for you. I will just send you suggestions with all this kind of stuff and then you can just accept them. But make sure your punctuation helps link those phrases and clauses to express your ideas, right? So we have commas, semicolons, colons, dashes. Commas are the most frequently used ones. And when you're reading out loud, a comma is a pause. So as a writer, you should use a comma to link words that belong together to separate those that don't. So we're going to look at some different ways that we use comma, right? We can use it to break off the beginning thing like, listen, the way it happened was crazy and you aren't going to believe it. We can take 2 sentences that are kind of could be separated and put them together. The teacher stood silently in front of the class. They looked at each other and then at her and fell silent themselves. Right? You can use them to make a list. Like my favorite candy is Skittles, peanut butter cups, and sour candies. Red Hook, a neighborhood in Brooklyn, is home to some innovative programs that serve young people. So you can use it to separate a descriptor, which is called an appositive, right? This isn't a positive. Richard, a former student, loved working at PS15 enough to enroll in our school and give us a chance. That's another appositive. Or you can use it when you're cutting off dialogue, right? It's good to meet you, Richard said. How long have you gone to South Brooklyn? And by the way, one really cool, easy way to make your narrative more interesting is to add some dialogue somewhere. Is there a possibility that you could show me a scene where you're talking to somebody? That's always interesting. Semicolons are important. We want to use them to link independent clauses in the same sentence without using like a conjunction like but or and. So a semicolon in the middle of a sentence makes you pause before you read the rest. And they can just take two sentences and help put them together again, right? Like Jenny sat down to eat lunch, her dog begged for a bite. You can also use a semicolon before any transition words or phrases like however or for instance. So Devin worked hard, therefore he passed the class. Semicolons can also separate items in a complex list. So often a list already contains commas, like the largest city in the United States are New York, New York, Los Angeles, California, Chicago, Illinois, and Houston, Texas, right? So if you're already putting commas in there, you got to use the semicolons instead to add. Colons are similar to semicolons, except they don't, it's like a semicolon is a dot with a comma under it, and this is just two dots. But they relate related information in a sentence. It's stronger than a semicolon. It indicates that the information that follows is directly related to the first part of a sentence. It's like saying, let me explain, or wait, there's more. So we can use it after the independent clauses. Because I was excited to collect so many berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. In this sentence, the first clause cannot stand on its own, so a colon cannot follow it. The correct sentence, I was excited to collect so many berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries. In this sentence, the first clause can stand on its own, so the colon can follow it. I took the because off, right? And that made it a dependent clause where I was waiting for something. With the because off, now I can have it be its own thing. So these are little fine-tuning grammar details that you may or may not be able to see on your own. If you can't see it on your own, that's fine. Just send me your essay. Let's see how you do on this, though. Which sentence is correctly using a colon? Make your answer choice. A healthy exercise routine includes tried and true injury prevention activities, colon, warming up, stretching, and drinking plenty of water. Like many new students, her first activities included registering for classes, becoming familiar with the campus, and attending a special orientation. This month's edition of the Teen Magazine features profiles of influential artists, fashion trends, and social issues that many of today's youth care about. Or before leaving the house, he had to make sure he had the directions to the event, an extra set of clothes, and a book to read while he waited. Do we think we know? You're looking for the this to be an independent clause. If this can stand alone, then it's using it correctly. All right. The correct answer was a healthy exercise routine includes tried and true injury prevention activities. All right. Fragments. I see a lot of fragments. I'm going quick because we're almost done and I've got a lot because, you know, I don't have every day in class with you. I have to push this all into one lesson. I know it's too much. Fragments are when a sentence can't stand on its own. A sentence has to contain at least one independent clause. When it doesn't, it's a fragment. So when you're looking at your writing, you make sure each sentence contains at least one independent clause. Pay attention to a sentence that begins with a subordinating conjunction like although or because. That's a great way to start a sentence, but it usually means you're going to have two clauses. Check to see whether the sentence is part of the previous sentence that was mistakenly separated by a period and fix that if that's the case. So for example, Jeremiah cut the cake while keeping the pieces even. That's not a real sentence. We should instead say Jeremiah cut the cake while keeping the pieces even and put them together. Run-ons is the opposite problem. So fragments are your sentences are too short. Run-ons are your sentences are too long. That's when you've got two or more clauses, but they're not punctuated right and they run together and they don't sound good. Review each sentence in your writing to see if you've contained more than one independent clause. So if you find a run-on sentence, you can use punctuation to divide it. So example, Nate ran across the finish line just ahead of his competition and he threw his hands in the air. Right? That's a run-on sentence because these two independent clauses are not separated, but we're going to add a comma and fix it. Nate ran across the finish line just ahead of his competition, comma, and he threw his hands in the air. Now that works perfectly. right? So the length of the sentence is not what makes it a run-on. It's the errors in punctuation that occur in our sentences that can make them run-ons. So again, that's just where you want to make sure you give me enough time. Do not think that you're turning this essay in on December 4th and I haven't seen it, because if I haven't seen it and I find all this, that will be a dock to your work. All right, I'm going to let us play this video. I'm going to reshare to make sure that I can play the video in a way that you hear it, because you got to press this button and you got to do this here.
Hi there. I'm grading some essays that students wrote about their summer adventures and noticed a few common errors that I wanted to show you so that you don't make the same mistakes. Here's the first one. Because the view was so beautiful. This is a sentence fragment. It begins with the subordinating conjunction because. Let's look at the sentence before this one. I put my phone away. Okay, I understand what Anthony wants to express, and I know a few ways to correct this fragment. First, let's see what would happen if we just remove because. I put my phone away. The view was so beautiful. This corrects the problem, but it sounds choppy. Instead, let's combine the sentences and bring back because. I put my phone away because the view was so beautiful. Great. Now we've corrected the fragment and the sentence flows naturally. Here's another common error I see. We went hiking. We went kayaking. This is a run-on sentence because there are multiple clauses that aren't correctly punctuated. We went hiking is an independent clause, and we went kayaking is an independent clause. How can we correct Anthony's run-on sentence? A simple way is to add a period and make two sentences. But Anthony may not want too many simple sentences in his essay. We can add a comma and a coordinating conjunction, such as and. That works, but there's another way to consider. A semicolon can take the place of the comma and the word and. That works too. Let's look at one more common mistake. It was a wonderful adventure. I was happy to return home. Here, Anthony has combined two independent clauses with only a comma. This is a comma splice, and it's easy to fix. The quickest way is to add a coordinating conjunction. In this case, Anthony should add the coordinating conjunction but. Our work here is done. Don't forget to look for these common errors when you're writing.
All right, so hopefully that made sense. The last thing you'll do after you've done your editing and after you've done your final revision and you're ready to submit your essay in your portfolio is do some reflecting. Because again, I'm not actually worried about your learning how to write the perfect essay. I want you to learn how to use the process so that you're always going to be able to write good essays, right? So it's not just about this one. I want you to have the skill, and the skill is to make sure you know the writing process, that it's about revision, it's about editing. You don't do it in one draft, you don't do it in one night. It's actually best to keep and partly why I did this by design, we put the second marking period was the essay so that there would be time between doing that work and then looking at it again to revise it. Because in that time that's passed, you were probably feeling like you're probably feeling like now you're seeing it with new eyes. You almost look at your writing as if I see it for a new thing. It's the first time I've ever seen it. And you're more able to see what you want to change and how it's not clear. You're more able to look at it instead of through the author's eyes, through the reader's eyes when it's been a few days or weeks. So we're going to look at these reflection questions. This is what's going to go in your portfolio. It's already, I'll show you in the document that I've created, but you'll use the writing process to complete this, right? How did you use this process? Who helped you? maybe it was just me, which is great. I want you to use me. That's what I'm here for. Get paid big money for this. And I love helping students write better. But maybe you didn't use me. I know some people have been going to the after school classes with Dylan and Kelly, and they are also English teachers and can absolutely support you in this. Dylan's your guy if you speak Spanish, because he speaks Spanish and I do not. So definitely mention who helped you, and have you completed a similar process to this in the past? Like, what's your experience with writing process work? Did you have writing workshop teachers in your early grades? My daughter is doing the same process in 3rd grade, so it's possible you've been doing it your entire school life. How have you gotten better at this type of work? What are you proud of? And where do you think you still need to improve? Are you someone who just can't see the grammar and spelling errors yet? That's fine. Are you someone who just really doesn't understand how to make your writing better? Whatever it is, name it. What do you still need to improve? And what would you change if you had the chance? Because ideally, this is the very last thing we do, right? So when you go to iLearn and you come to your class, looks like I stayed away too long, so I have to log in, but eventually you'll find this document, right? This is this one, your ePortfolio. And when you get a document, a Google document that you cannot read because it says view only, all you have to do is go make a copy of it, right? Don't ask me for permission, just make a copy of the entire presentation. That way you'll be able to put your name on it and share it and have it be your work. At which point you'll change the name here. You'll write any quote you want, or you can just blank that out if you don't want to put a quote. And then there's a little space to add a picture of you and say a statement about you. There's a place to put some goals that you could put from the professionality assignments we've done, or you could make them up now. And then there's going to be a place to put your personal narrative. I want a screenshot of your first draft. Now, some people might be saying, oh, but I did all the revision already and I don't know, I can't find a first draft. Well, let me show you how we might do this. So you get yourself a draft, right? And you want to see, actually, let's pick this one because it might have more evidence of work. But if you've gone through some revision process already, you just come over here to File, you go down to Version History, and you go to See Version History. Now you can see the oldest version of it, right? And so your oldest version of it, you restore that version and you take a screenshot to say, I've done some revision, right? This was my first draft. And then a screenshot is just Command-Shift-3, right? And then you go back to Version History, See Version History, and you go, I'm going to go to my most recent version, restore that version. And now I'm able to take that screenshot and put it here, right? Screenshot. And then if I did a second draft, you could add another slide and put a second draft in. But your final page is a screenshot and hyperlink to your final draft, right? So if this is your final draft, the link you get by going to share, and you can copy that link. And then when you've taken your screenshot here, you just, can't stay on the right page, it seems like. You come up to find the insert, right? And you're going to insert a link. Once you've got something here, you can insert a link to it. You'll get it right there. Insert the link, paste the link to your essay, and that way the essay will be hyperlinked right here. I'll do a separate lesson on that and send that out as a short video. But do we have any questions? So just to be clear, just to do a last overview, you're in iLearn in English A, which is this class, and the portfolio assignment is here, right? So you launch the unit. This is the portfolio. You need to have a narrative essay that's revised. Today's lesson was about this. You'll also need a literary analysis or research podcast paper. That will be next week. I'll give you that lesson. You'll also need a final reflection essay. I'll send that out as a video lesson because we won't have a live session for that because next week is Thanksgiving. And then you can submit your poetry. Remember, Advocate of Words is coming this afternoon again at 1:20. And if you've been working with him, you should have several poems already. And they will go in to add to and boost your grade. So you'll find a copy of the details of the assignment and the reflection essay here. Again, this is a read only. You're going to have a view only thing. So if you want to write directly on this, you're going to need to make a copy of it by going here. Notice this is the live lesson I did today. Then I have this planned for next Tuesday. I'll have to do some video lessons that I just post and email out for the last two things because we're running out of time. Your final reflection though, this is how you really prove that you should have this credit, right? Each of you is in a different credit. Some of you are in English 9 and some of you are in English 10. Some of you are in English like freshman year first semester, some are in freshman year second semester, some are in sophomore year first semester. So depending on where you are, you should have more or less mastered these standards. And this is what we've been focused on, right? We've been focused on the first marking period was all about determining theme and central idea and analyzing it and its development. I wanted you to look at how other authors write before we started writing ourselves. The second marking period that we were talking about today was all about writing a narrative and using effective techniques and well-chosen details and well-structured event sequences, right? So again, that's why we have to revise to make that really a strong narrative. The third marking period project was about doing a research project and answering a question and synthesizing your sources. Again, I didn't get works cited pages from most people, so that's a piece that has to be revised for this final marking period. Again, the podcast was about presenting information, findings, and supporting evidence clearly and concisely and logically so that listeners can follow. That was making your podcast. And finally, all of this is about, can you demonstrate your standard English conventions, that you capitalize your I's and you use commas in the right place, right? So your job will be to write an essay in which you discuss your learning of these standards and propose what grade you should earn and why. It'll be several paragraphs and contain supporting evidence for your claims. If you need an outline, it's here. These have sentence starters. Now, yesterday somebody asked me about this sentence starter. I independently read. This is more or less than usual. If you haven't been reading anything, you can't use the sentence starter. This is for people who read independently, who spend time reading articles online, who spend time reading books, who have a library book app, Libby. That's for those people, because I want to give you credit for that. But if you haven't read anything, if you actively avoid reading of all kinds, then just skip that sentence starter because that doesn't help you. It doesn't support you. And if you didn't do the first marking period project, you got to realize that you haven't been improving your reading skills this trimester. And reading is one of those things that we build by doing it. So if you haven't been reading anything and you haven't been doing the school assignments that were around reading, that's an area that you want to think about, right? Overall, how well do you read? Do you read well enough to graduate high school easily and effortlessly? And then, how's your writing been? Did you do your narrative? Everybody's got to do this. So talk about your writing process. And then you're speaking and listening. I got observed last week for teaching, and I was told that my students weren't talking in the live Zoom classes. And I really don't know how to get you guys to do that. So talk to me about that. What's that about? And then, it's also really hard to do relationships through this computer screen. So how's that going for us? This is going to be different than it has been in the past. That's your final assignment. And then when you come back, you'll also see, I think, the link to your portfolio. You're going to, again, make a copy of this so that you can create it and put it together. It has spaces for everything you might need to put in, and you can delete any screens that you don't need, right? So if you choose not to put any poems in, you can delete that screen. All right, I think that's all for today, unless anybody has any last questions. You are done for English. Sorry I kept you over. And the last page of the Nearpod, if you're on it still, is just a what's your next step? Let me know.
All right, so everything is on iLearn, right?
Everything's on iLearn. And every lesson I've taught this entire time is also on iLearn, right?
Yeah.
So if you've missed a lesson,